Well, welcome back to Out to Lunch with Judy on time. We had a late lunch yesterday. I couldn't get it together in enough time to post this for East Coast lunch, but we did get it in for West Coast lunch. Anyway, I think I'm doing a little better today. I want to piggyback onto what I was saying yesterday about meeting people where they are when you're discussing politics and not pushing back and arguing all the time. Try getting in your head not to argue, because the more you talk to people, the more you simply engage them in sharing their ideas. Well, if they have ideas. I mean, there are some people that unfortunately are a little brain dead and they have no ideas and you can't have a conversation, or they're afraid. They're afraid to talk. They're not really comfortable. But there's a big message with this that I want to share with you, because I continued to think about it yesterday, about meeting people where they're at. As mediators, this is what we do. We try and engage people in sharing their thinking, where it came from, how it originated, and they start sorting out their own issues in divorce mediation, interestingly. But before we start, because this is about eating too, I did another video, I don't know, last week or the week before, about speaking up. I was at the New York Bagel Deli early last week, getting my favorite Italiano sub, which I only eat 2 to 3 times a year because it's way too much food and it takes me 3 days to eat it. And I explained that I had to speak up because it went from $10 to $13, now it's $17.50. I mean, it's giant, without a doubt, it's giant. But after I put my order in and I'm standing at the register, for those of you who didn't watch that video, 3 men that worked at New York Bagel Deli, this is really funny, 3 men converge and they look at the extra long bread that you're going to put the meat in. That whole thing isn't used for one person, but half of it is used, and of that half is cut into half, and those are huge, huge halves. So they're quarters, right? They're huge unto themselves. So 2 people can dine off of this ginormous thing. So these 3 men were standing there, with the knife, deciding how they were going to cut it. And I know they were going to make it smaller than normal. Because in Los Angeles, this is what's happening in restaurants. People are charging more and giving you smaller portions. And nobody's speaking up. They're just saying, okay, we'll accept it. It's not right. No, I don't want to accept it. If you're going to cut down the portion size while you're charging me more, I'm not going to eat it. There are many other things I could eat. So I said to the gentleman at New York Bagel Deli, don't you dare for 1 second think you're going to cut this down and make it smaller than normal. I've been eating this for years. If you can't give me regular size, give me my money back, I'll go. They gave me regular size. Same thing happened yesterday. I'm at a different place. I'm at Zenku, which is a very delicious fast food Mediterranean place. It really is great. It's a chain. I love going there. Tons of people go there. It's a well-known Mediterranean fast food chain. So I always get the salad with feta cheese, olives, onions, and salad, cucumber. And then you're supposed to have this lemon tahini dressing, and it's quite delicious with pita chips. They give you pita chips. Well, I went there after work because I cannot go anywhere today. I'm booked solid, and I have to eat, of course. I have the video to do, and I have myself to feed because I don't eat dinner. I stop eating at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then by the time 7 o'clock rolls around, 7:30 in the morning, I is starving, especially since I exercise. They gave me this salad, only it was half the size of this. They gave it to me in this bowl, but you could barely see the salad. It was so small, it was ridiculous, and I looked at it, and I said, this isn't a full-size salad. I eat this salad all the time. whoever made it doesn't understand. Maybe they're new, but you either charge me half price for this or give me a full salad. And the guy just stares at me. I said, well, then give me your manager. I mean, we all know what the size of the salad is. You produce many of them in a given day, and I eat many of them throughout the month. They gave me the full-size salad. You have to speak up. You actually have to communicate. So I opened it up to do the video today and to eat while I'm doing the video, and I realized they didn't include the dressing. Fortunately, on Mondays, I get a small tahini sauce, which is so creamy and delicious, which will now become the dressing. I don't mind that, actually. And a full-size hummus, which I'm going to dip my baby carrots in, and my pita chips. Trust. It is so hard. And you know, to trust the takeout people, you're putting a lot of trust in them. And they screw up a lot. You have to check the bag. I say this time and time again, and I screw up myself. You have to check the bag to make sure everything's there. But if there's a lot going on, and I was getting an emergency phone call from one of my friends, her mother's dying, so much going down, I blew it on. They didn't have the lemon tahini in the small little thing in here. So anyway, it is what it is. Let me get on to the real point of this video today, because it is good. So yesterday I was saying you have to meet people where they're at. You can't convince people of things they don't want to be convinced of. It's a loser's conversation. Don't do it. This is to all of the people who are scared out of their freaking minds that Donald Trump is going to be president. I'm one of those people, scared out of my mind. So I knew of Donald Trump well before The Apprentice went on the air. I knew about all the failed businesses, all the horrible intimate relationships that he had. He was in the news. He's a philanderer. And I watched him do interviews like on Larry King and all these other talk shows, and there was a darkness about him. There was a darkness about the man, and it made me very uncomfortable. And then when he started talking about running for president in the late 80s, early 90s, I'm like, oh God, please. You are not the right person. I'm listening to you. I'm watching you behave in business. I'm looking at all the failed businesses. I know people who did business with him that he never paid. This is why he couldn't get any bank loans in New York City. He had to go to Deutsche Bank in Germany. He had to look outside the city, outside the country. New York knew him. They weren't going to loan money to him. Okay. So scared to death. We've already seen him in his first term of president. You know, we know all about the violence perpetrated from the stage as he's campaigning, you know, lock her up. We know about the Muslim ban. We know about Charlottesville, culminating, yada, 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 to January 6th. Okay, we all know that. But with that, some people are like, still voting for him. And other people are like, I am scared to death if this man gets in office, certainly because there's immunity now from the Supreme Court, who of course is the un-Supreme Court now. So everything is collapsing around us. Our whole system is collapsing around us. And honestly, maybe that's for the better. You know, things happen as they need to happen, and so that we have an opportunity to correct ourselves. It happens in all walks of life. So I'm thinking maybe we kind of need this to happen. Maybe we need Donald Trump to come back in to let the system collapse. Sorry about that. And rebuild in a better way. But the only way we're going to rebuild in a better way is if we discuss this idea that I'm having. So I welcome all comments. Keep talking and embracing the people who are going to vote for him and that you know did vote for him. Do not ostracize these people from your life. Whether they're family or friends or neighbors, don't ostracize them for two reasons. If we continue to build on the fact that we live in communities that aren't going to change regardless of who becomes president, we can build stronger communities. And we can then identify maybe differently the people who are good for us and the people who aren't good, because we have created a collective dialogue. We are listening to each other in ways that we've never listened before. We're respecting each other in ways we've never respected each other before. But if we remain a community, and part of being in a community is communicating, if we continue to communicate with people who we are pushing out of our lives now, what we can do is A, help them when the shit hits the fan. Because listen, if they, are the majority, certainly if they're in the swing states, because we don't really have a democracy, on the national level, the presidential level, we have representative government. So the majority does not rule. The majority vote does not rule for the presidential election. Okay, that's fine. That's what it is. Nobody's changing it. Our politicians can change it. They're not. But we as a community can start looking at people differently and holding them to higher standards. But we can only do that if we're in communication with each other, right? Let's go out to dinner. Let's hold block parties. Let's do open conversations in our community without ripping people apart, without being condescending, without being shocking. So the shock is over. Half the country is going to vote for him and half the country is going to vote for her, and that's just the way it is, and let's see how the swing states work out. If he does become elected, what will happen in larger measure is what happened with the mass deportations in his first year in 2017. And here's what happened. So yeah, okay, illegal, gotta go. I get that. I'm really not opposed to illegal going. Just we have to do something. We have to have a systematic approach. I mean, my God, you can't just open the borders and let anybody come in. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't care whether you call me Democrat or conservative. It doesn't make sense to me. You have to have policy, and you have to have discussion about policy, and you have to have limits. And there's other ways to help people in other countries than letting them all in this country if we are at a limit. I was on the Yahoo homepage in 2017 when the mass deportations were happening, and there was a Latina woman with an infant in her arms, crying in the doorway of her home because ICE had just come and taken her husband out because he was illegal. And here's what she said: I didn't think it would happen to me. I voted for him. I voted for him. He talked about mass deportations. Every president has dealt with it. Conservative and liberal, they've all dealt with it. How did this woman think that her name would be on a ledger and a roll or something that Donald Trump would know about, that ICE, Department of Immigration would know about? And because she voted for Donald Trump, her husband isn't going to get deported? This is how people think. This is why I really think we need to have a test before we let people vote, an intelligence test. So she voted for him and thinking that her illegal husband would not get shipped back to wherever because she voted for Donald Trump. I mean, that makes no sense. So what's going to happen is, if he gets in, people like my friend who's a Jewish Iranian woman who thinks voting for Donald Trump is somehow going to prevent people from putting swastikas on her home, going to prevent prejudice against her, that's what she thinks. I don't know where she gets this idea. She's watched Charlottesville, she watched the Muslim ban. I don't know what's in her head, but people are not looking at this rationally and logically, and they're going to need us. That's the point of communication. They're going to need us. And I want us to be right there. I want us to be ready to engage in conversation, to say, look, he told you who he was. He told all of us who he was. He told all of us what he was going to do. Why didn't you listen? Because they're in the cult. And that's the other thing. I've interviewed a member of a cult for my divorce podcast. I mentioned this. Her name was Kelly Teal, I think. Go look at it on the Amicable Divorce Expert podcast. The Amicable Divorce Expert podcast. And look for Kelly Teal, and it's about being in a cult. Because I was relating being in a cult to being in a marriage where somebody's abusive to you and you just keep making excuses for it. That's like being in a cult. You're in a cult marriage. You're somehow thinking that this hatred your spouse is, generating and the hurt he's levying on you somehow can be changed. Well, it can't be. I mean, that person has to go into some kind of gross therapy. So they're in a cult. In fact, Nick Fuentes, I've mentioned this before too, who was one of the January 6 rioters, and he's either the guy with the horns or he's the guy in the picture with the guy in the horns. There's this famous picture of several people lined up with the guy with the horns. I think Nick Fuentes is in that picture. Nick, when he heard Trump admit recently in interviews that he definitely knew he lost the election, but it was by such a small margin it didn't count. And he didn't want to leave the presidency. So he figured he could bully it and, have violence attached to getting it back. He believed violence was going to work. Thank God Mike Pence didn't. And we proceeded on with, a verified election. So Nick Fuentes is now having a podcast talking about what it's like being in the cult and trying to get people not to vote for Donald Trump because it's going to be worse the second time around. So this kind of mitigates my fear. So when I turn my fear into positive action, let me see what I can do when the shit hits the fan, if he's elected and all the devastation, it comes down on our heads and the people who voted for him find out, no, you're not going to get protected. There's nothing good that's going to really happen to your life. The economy is not going to just magically be better. None of that's going to happen unless gasoline prices go down dramatically and all the purveyors of goods also lower their prices. It's hard to get somebody to lower their prices. It really is hard. So we'll just see what happens. But my whole point is, do not detach from these people. Be in their lives. Be there to help them when everything goes south, because it will if he's reelected. And he's going to die soon, not by assassination. Everybody dies. And he's not in great health. I mean, obviously you can listen to him. So something's going to happen. He's not going to be there forever. But be there for the people that voted for him. They're going to need our help. And I think it's important that we're there to help them and communicate. Because if we develop a strong community during these stressful times, it's going to be to our advantage as we're moving through the stressful times to a much easier place in life. So please don't X these people, no pun intended, out of your lives. Keep them in your lives, keep them talking. Don't argue with them, be soft-spoken, and eventually they're going to want to listen to you. Because if we give people respect, they give us respect back, mostly. So let's give everybody this respect. Let's listen to them. Let's give them the platform they need. And let's softly have conversations with them to show them we don't hate them. And let's see where we can all go as a community, and let's find compromise on our own. Let's see where we want to have compromise by raising people up, by appreciating people, and by using our differences to create a new path forward that hopefully works for most everybody. So is that my out to lunch with Judy thinking? I think it's good thinking. So thank you for your time, and give me your comments. I really appreciate that. Have a great day.